Chapter 5 of Book 4 of Les Misérables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bruce Peary. Les Misérables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. Translated by Isabel, Florence, HAPGOOD. Book 4, The Friends of the ABC. Chapter 5, Enlargement of Horizon. The shocks of youthful minds among themselves have this admirable property, that one can never foresee the spark, nor divine the lightning flash. What will dart out presently, no one knows. The burst of laughter starts from a tender feeling. At the moment of jest, the serious makes its entry. Impulses depend on the first chance word. The spirit of each is sovereign. Jest suffices to open the field to the unexpected. These are conversations with abrupt turns, in which the perspective changes suddenly. Chance is the stage manager of such conversations. A severe thought, starting oddly from a clash of words, suddenly traversed the conflict of quips in which Grantaire, Bahorel, Prouvaire, Bossuet, Combeferre, and Courfeyrac were confusedly fencing. How does a phrase crop up in a dialogue? Whence comes it that it suddenly impresses itself on the attention of those who hear it? We have just said that no one knows anything about it. In the midst of the uproar, Bossuet all at once terminated some apostrophe to Combeferre with this date: June 18th, 1815, Waterloo. At this name of Waterloo, Marius, who was leaning his elbows on a table beside a glass of water, removed his wrist from beneath his chin and began to gaze fixedly at the audience. "Pardieu!" exclaimed Courfeyrac. Parbleu was falling into disuse at this period. "That number 18 is strange and strikes me. It is Bonaparte's fatal number. Place Louis in front and Brumaire behind, and you have the whole destiny of the man, with this significant peculiarity, that the end treads close on the heels of the commencement." Enjolras, who had remained mute up to that point, broke the silence and addressed this remark to Combeferre: "You mean to say, the crime and the expiation." This word crime overpassed the measure of what Marius, who was already greatly agitated by the abrupt evocation of Waterloo, could accept. He rose, walked slowly to the map of France spread out on the wall, and at whose base an island was visible in a separate compartment, laid his finger on this compartment, and said: "Corsica, a little island which has rendered France very great." This was like a breath of icy air. All ceased talking. They felt that something was on the point of occurring. Bahorel, replying to Bossuet, was just assuming an attitude of the torso to which he was addicted. He gave it up to listen. Enjolras, whose blue eye was not fixed on anyone, and who seemed to be gazing at space, replied, without glancing at Marius: "France needs no Corsica to be great. France is great because she is France, quia nomina leo." Marius felt no desire to retreat. He turned towards Enjolras, and his voice burst forth with a vibration which came from a quiver of his very being. "God forbid that I should diminish France, but amalgamating Napoleon with her is not diminishing her. Come, let us argue the question. I am a newcomer among you, but I will confess that you amaze me. Where do we stand? Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? Let us come to an explanation about the Emperor. I hear you say Buonaparte, accentuating the U like the royalists. I warn you that my grandfather does better still. He says Buonaparte. I thought you were young men. Where then is your enthusiasm? And what are you doing with it? Whom do you admire if you do not admire the Emperor? And what more do you want? If you will have none of that great man, what great man would you like? He had everything. He was complete. He had in his brain the sum of human faculties. He made codes like Justinian. He dictated like Caesar. His conversation was mingled with the lightning flash of Pascal, with the thunderclap of Tacitus. He made history and he wrote it. His bulletins are Iliads. He combined the cipher of Newton with the metaphor of Mahomet. He left behind him in the East words as great as the pyramids. At Tilsit he taught emperors majesty. At the Academy of Sciences he replied to Laplace. In the Council of State he held his own against Merlin. He gave a soul to the geometry of the first and to the chicanery of the last. He was a legist with the attorneys and sidereal with the astronomers. Like Cromwell blowing out one of two candles, he went to the temple to bargain for a curtain tassel. He saw everything, he knew everything, which did not prevent him from laughing good-naturedly beside the cradle of his little child. And all at once frightened Europe lent an ear, armies put themselves in motion, parks of artillery rumbled, pontoons stretched over the rivers, clouds of cavalry galloped in the storm, cries, trumpets, a trembling of thrones in every direction. The frontiers of kingdoms oscillated on the map. The sound of a superhuman sword was heard as it was drawn from its sheath. They beheld him, rise erect on the horizon, with a blazing brand in his hand and a glow in his eyes, unfolding amid the thunder his two wings, the Grand Army and the Old Guard, and he was the Archangel of War. All held their peace, and Enjolras bowed his head. Silence always produces somewhat the effect of acquiescence, of the enemy being driven to the wall. Marius continued with increased enthusiasm, and almost without pausing for breath. Let us be just, my friends. What a splendid destiny for a nation to be the empire of such an emperor, when that nation is France, and when it adds its own genius to the genius of that man. To appear and to reign, to march and to triumph, to have for halting places all capitals, to take his grenadiers and to make kings of them, to decree the falls of dynasties, and to transfigure Europe at the pace of a charge, to make you feel that when you threaten you lay your hand on the hilt of the sword of God, to follow in a single man Hannibal, Caesar, Charlemagne, to be the people of some one who mingles with your dawns the startling announcement of a battle won, to have the cannon of the Invalides to rouse you in the morning, to hurl you into abysses of light prodigious words which flame for ever, Marengo, Arcola, Austerlitz, Jena, Wagram, to cause constellations of victories to flash forth at each instant from the zenith of the centuries, to make the French Empire a pendant to the Roman Empire, to be the great nation and to give birth to the Grand Army, to make its legions fly forth over all the earth, as a mountain sends out its eagles on all sides to conquer, to dominate, to strike with lightning, to be in Europe a sort of nation gilded through glory, to sound athwart the centuries a trumpet blast of Titans, to conquer the world twice, by conquest and by dazzling. That is sublime, and what greater thing is there? To be free, said Combeferre. Marius lowered his head in his turn. That cold and simple word had traversed his epic effusion like a blade of steel, and he felt it vanishing within him. When he raised his eyes, Combeferre was no longer there. Probably satisfied with his reply to the apotheosis, he had just taken his departure, and all, with the exception of Enjolras, had followed him. The room had been emptied. Enjolras, left alone with Marius, was gazing gravely at him. Marius, however, having rallied his ideas to some extent, did not consider himself beaten. There lingered in him a trace of inward fermentation, which was on the point, no doubt, of translating itself into syllogisms arrayed against Enjolras, when, all of a sudden, they heard some one singing on the stairs as he went. It was Combeferre, and this is what he was singing. Si César m'avait donné la gloire et la guerre, et qu'il me fallait quitter l'amour de ma mère, je dirais au grand César, reprends ton sceptre et ton char. J'aime mieux ma mère, ô Gué, j'aime mieux ma mère. The wild and tender accents with which Combeferre sang communicated to this couplet a sort of strange grandeur. Marius, thoughtfully, and with his eyes diked on the ceiling, repeated almost mechanically, "My mother?" At that moment he felt Enjolras' hand on his shoulder. "Citizen," said Enjolras to him, "my mother is the Republic." End of Book 4, Chapter 5.